Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first ever live recording of the Elite Few podcast. Tiffany,
Hey, everybody.
of course.
Hey, guys, thanks for joining us live.
Yeah, so this is going to be a live version. So if you're tuning in now or you're tuning in later, just know that this is going to be Tiffany at her raw. No editing. You'll see me as a producer looking at the screen, double checking the live chats if the live chat comes up. So if I'm not looking directly at the camera, please don't follow me. We've also got no guest today. We are the guest today. Tiffany is the guest today because today's episode, even though we've got big smiles on our face for going live for the first time ever, this is a very, very serious episode. We wanted to go live because this is going to be basically the beginning story of why Tiffany wanted to create this podcast in the first place. So about 2 years ago, she came to me and said, all this stuff that was going on with some things we'll talk about in a few minutes. I don't want to spoil it, but she wanted a way to get it off her chest. And I'm like, oh my gosh, a podcast would be amazing. And so we started thinking about how to do this in a podcast. Well, it took 2 years to get it to a point where we actually went live because, of course, we realized that what she wanted to talk about wouldn't be a great podcast because podcasts are supposed to be episodes and episodes and years and seasons and all this stuff. Am I wrong?
No, we're hoping it doesn't take that long to tell my story.
Right, exactly. So once she's done with her story, we realized that we didn't want that to be the end and done. So we came up with the idea so through her story, Tiffany has been doing a lot of healing through this. And she's been introduced to so many wonderful people. So that was it. That was the primary reason to bring out the Elite Few. And once again, few stands for fabulous, extraordinary world, and the people that are in it that make a difference. And Tiffany has met a lot of people in the last year and a half, 2 years that have made a difference in her and how she can have a smile on her face now instead of being 6 feet under, because some of the stuff you're going to hear, and this is going to be an introductory to why she has had to go into this healing process today.
Yeah.
So once again, just if you're tuning in live, you have questions, we may be able to get to them, may not. We're trying to keep this to as close to an hour as possible, but it's going to be an introductory to everything that Tiffany has been wanting to talk about for a long time, but have been unable to due to legal reasons. So, Tiffany, first of all, just thanks for coming on. Thanks for being so vulnerable. This is going to be a vulnerable time for you.
I know. I'm probably going to have some tears at some point during this. I'm positive.
Well, the good news is, just a little history about Tiffany and I. I am her producer for the Elite Few, but I'm also one of her longest friends. I've been friends with her since freshman year in high school. So we consider each other best friends. I know we all have multiple best friends, but we consider each other best friends. Our families get along great. Her son, my kids, my wife, and her, we're all big one. We're it's almost like brother, and it's almost like almost like it's Aunt Tiffany. I mean, the kids call you Aunt Tiffany.
We do operate like siblings.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. I mean, in the sense that I think that it's really great because we don't have to skate around things with each other.
No, not at all. No. And the one thing too is we are definitely, and you'd see it, you don't see some of the behind the scenes. Tiffany and I kind of get into it a little bit.
Some of our guests have seen it. Sheila was like, wow, you guys argue like siblings. And we're like, wow, we had to explain. It's not our first time.
So there's been some times when Tiffany and I have difference of opinion or just, just focus, both of us trying to focus and everything. And,
sometimes it's not even an opinion. It's just us,
Right.
I don't know, agreeing.
So let's go ahead and get into this.
We're still fighting.
We had, so the last episode that if you guys tuned in for the last episode last week, it was the narcissism episode. And she kind of sprinkled in some introductory points about her ex and his narcissistic ways. and some of the things that had happened throughout the marriage and throughout the years that were very damaging, very abusive, very mentally, physically abusive. We're going to talk about that kind of stuff today. It's one of those things where that episode leads into this one perfect. We wanted to do it live. We wanted to have this to be a very vulnerable time in general. We didn't want this to go through any editing because I think you need to hear the story in real time. Even though this is recording, you may listen to this later. At least it's being recorded in a live format. So Tiffany, real quick, let's talk about real quick about, what, what you wanted to do originally about coming on with the podcast and how you wanted to start this conversation.
Well, it's a really good question. I feel like in the beginning, there's a series of events that happened that we really needed to like, oh my God, if we don't get this out, I'm going to lose my mind.
Right.
The reality of the pain and the hurt and everything that was going on, it was as if someone took my skin off. And I literally felt like I was dying because I actually think I did. I mean, anyone asked me, that girl from back then, she's dead. She's dead. She does not exist anymore. I remember when I was talking to a friend of mine in January, December, and it was that I am no longer trying to get back to who I was. That's gone.
Right.
I'm rebuilding myself, which we know started in January. And I like this person a lot better. But that rebuilding process took a lot of work. So we went through, 9 months of me just basically keeping as busy as possible. I was traveling nonstop. If I wasn't in the air, I was down here at a party at my house. I mean, at one point at Christmas, we drove in from Ohio and I had a family Christmas event here that night for my parents were here, Javen, Denise, Amanda, like it was the family event. And it was like the 27th or 20th because Southwest, whatever. But that wasn't unusual for me to have to go boom, boom, boom. That's the way I was keeping it. I would land, decorate for whatever holiday, have a surgery, have a thing. Somebody's in town. Somebody leaves, I leave. Like there was no moments where I could sit and think. And if there was, I did not like that. It was, I don't even know if it was the sitting or thinking. I think it was that that whole trauma, it wasn't earth shaking. So I think I sent this to you at 5 or 6 in the morning. I woke up, I couldn't sleep, of course, at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, couldn't sleep. And I had prayed for a little while and I was trying to drift back to sleep. And I was trying to decide and pull back the layers of what's the upset part? Like, what is this something's inside that I have been peeling away, healing, forgiving? What is going on? And all of a sudden I had a memory of something that hadn't happened in 10 years from now. And it was a memory of what we had planned to do with grandkids with Javen at Christmas. Cause I'm now getting ready for Christmas. It takes me.
Okay, and when you say you're talking about your ex-husband and you.
The ex-husband and Javen and right. And so we were talking about how things would unfold at Christmas with grandkids. And that memory of what future would be literally hit me so hard because I realized he didn't steal from me. I mean, yeah, he took from me almost 3 decades of ridiculous life that I should have had to myself. And I didn't have to marry him. God did tell me I didn't have to. That's a whole nother story we'll get into later. And I regret that every moment. But the reality is that I had a whole future that I had worked for all these years for. I built traditions. I purposely bought things when Javen was a child so that when he had grandkids, these traditions would be enacted with them. Like I laid it out. Like Javen always joked that I actually didn't want kids. I just want grandkids because I would always be like, this is for the grandkids, even when he's 6. Right. Like, and I would be like doing all these things on purpose. But
yeah, but when he was 6, he was more like he was 16. So that boy's always been older than he was. Right?
My God, that kid. Oh yeah. Yeah. There was a time my brother was getting married. He was 6 or 7. He called Javen to tell him he was engaged. And he was telling me about it. And I said, Javen, your uncle just called to tell you he got engaged. When's the wedding? It's in 2 years. Yeah, that's not engaged. You let me know when it's 6 months away. Then we'll talk about it.
Right.
He was 6 or 7.
Right.
And I'm like, what the heck did I give birth to? He was like,
so let's real quick.
Cynical at 6 years old.
Right. So let's back up a little bit. Let's back up to, and you said that this, so you had that future thought. Now, was that future thought empty to you? Like you didn't
it
see
was
him,
like,
you didn't see your ex-husband in the picture?
So in the picture I did, it was an actual remembrance of me remembering us planning this, right?
Okay.
And I remember, I'm glad he's not there. I'm glad none of this is happening and it's not a real future. But I realized that a lot of the pain was all of those things. So, remember right before COVID, we were looking for lakefront property.
Right.
I wanted to live on the water. I wanted to live near the water at some point. Right. Not really ocean. I'm more like inlet, lake inlet. Yeah. And so I'm like, I want to be on, we were looking and properties were like 100,000. Remember, you could get like an acre for $100,000 back then before COVID here in Florida on the water. That same property 4 months into COVID was 200,000. And a year ago, that same property is 380,000. Now it's 500. It's an acre without a house. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I'm not saying it's ever going to be impossible. And that's not what I'm sad about. The reality was we had laid out a foundation of when these things happen, we're going to do this. Right. Mm-hmm. And part of that doing it together was the idea of what I was enduring, right? Like I'm enduring this because my child doesn't know any of these things that happened as a child. He doesn't know about, drug use that I had or affairs that he had.
Now, wait a second. Was this your drug use or his drug use?
Well, I wish I would have done more drugs. To be honest with you, I didn't. I probably would have helped. I'm just going to tell you, looking back, I feel like Alice in Wonderland had drugs and I haven't had them. So I feel like I need it. I do have to use Xanax sometimes, but after I found out
what you're talking about
this, I look for,
Right. These are prescription drugs that you were talking about getting through troubled times.
No, I'm talking about my ex's drug use.
Okay. So your ex's drug use. So he actually had a drug issue.
It wasn't really an addiction. It was just him always playing around, but I had to babysit him 24/7.
Gotcha.
And Javen, my son didn't know about any of this.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
he didn't know.
Of course, you
don't tell your kids.
Yeah, you don't tell your kids what's going on in your marriage, especially when they're young, maybe when they're older, but
no, it's
one
not
of those
appropriate.
things. So when this vision, like what is that vision that you had about the future, where does that fall into what you told me about the day of the boat?
I don't know,
so
because
we can kind of back up and
we'll go into more detail of that, when we're later on, but that wasn't even applying that day. That was done. Well, remember, we separated in 2015.
Okay. So there was already some precursors to issues in the marriage.
Oh yeah. And I openly admit, I have no problem admitting the stuff I've ever done. I'm just saying, I don't have to hide my stuff. I'm not really ashamed. I filed for divorce. I moved out and I saw somebody for a little while. It wasn't really a serious thing. We were just, we went to school together and it wasn't a thing, right? But
there was a separation. There was a divorce.
There was a separation. Yeah. This wasn't an affair. This was like, whatever. But the reality was he slept with people that were my friends. He didn't think I knew. But the irony is, any of those people that ever think they were special, you're not special. I always knew because he would come back and say crap like how trashy they were. Like I remember this one girl, he said, it's funny how skinny girls look attractive until you're up close. Because I'm really glad you have big boobs. And I was like, well, that's an odd thing to say. In your skin, you take really good care of your skin. You ever notice how that person has like trailer skin? And I was
Like that's a
and
thing,
that
I
was,
guess. I don't know.
yeah, well, it is. And I actually do comment on trailer skin a lot because it really drives me kind of gross crazy. I'm like, ladies, please put some moisturizer. You can get it at the dollar store. Just put it on your face. It's so easy. But there is a thing where people will look like it's almost like their skin's dried out from the inside. And why is he talking about that person in that
Right.
way? That's something girls do. We throw shade. Guys don't do that. I've never once heard you throw shade. Well, okay, maybe a couple times, but but the person totally deserved it. It wasn't like a girl catty thing. So
It was
the
just a vent,
reality is,
and then I've forgotten
totally,
about it. No.
right. And the reality is, I knew at that moment exactly what was going on because this happened several times. When I would bring it up, he would just say this answer to me, like, "You realize you're accusing me of adultery." Like, oh, okay.
Well, and that's, that's back to the narcissistic way that we discussed last episode.
Exactly.
Yes. Where the narcissist never know they can do no wrong. They have there's if you haven't watched that episode yet, go back where we have
he's
our
not
professional
wrong,
come
right?
in and talk about narcissistic ways and some of the stuff that Tiffany dealt with.
Yep.
So through that that mental abuse, here's that we
Well, and the
spoke about.
gaslighting, look how long you have dealt with this. You personally have dealt with it with me even during this program, even us doing the show together, getting it started, putting it together. My financial advisor has brought stuff up to me. He would say it all the time. He would tell me constantly, "You will never be able to leave me and find somebody who's willing to pay for you and have sex with you."
He is
my
your
ex-husband, yeah.
not your financial, because you said your financial
No,
advisor.
not my financial advisor. No, but you guys have both brought up that because I would say stuff like, "I'm really worried about being able to support myself," and you're like, "You're fine," and I have this weird fear, and that came from that, which is why we talked about the internal healing and stuff I had to go through, and to recognize, wait a minute, that loop, that subconscious loop, and that stuff in my brain, and I was really good at manifesting stuff despite the negativity in my marriage. But that loop keeps me from moving ahead successfully the way I needed to, because even though I don't believe it, there's always that doubt that pops up and you're like, maybe it's a little true. And it's not.
You've learned over the last year, it's not true. None of the stuff that you ever put in your head were true. We've not just myself, but there's been plenty of people that have supported you through this process and who have held you up, sometimes physically. We've had people fly in to take care of you during some surgeries from car accidents that you've had in the past.
I have a lot of support.
You had a lot of support and people that love you and love your son to help get him through this, and I'm not sure how much you want to talk about tonight and it is we're live, so it's 9:30 at night.
We're live. We're here.
So
it's happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, this was a vulnerable time for both of us. We're live. We're kind of, we wanted to shoot off the hip with these questions and with this guidance. We will get a lot more into it. There is a little bit more legality stuff that's happening. But the main thing with this is the reason why Tiffany has the elite few is because what she went through to help her get through this. She met some amazing, fabulous people, right? Stay fabulous. That's what you always say at the end of the show.
That's what I say.
We'll probably say at the end of this one too. But there's been some fabulous, extraordinary people in this world that has helped Tiffany. And that's what we wanted to bring to light. We want to interview those people. We wanted to interview people that in general have helped people. And that's what the elite few is all about. These certain sessions are going to be about why Tiffany got there and why Tiffany met these people, why we are seeking other people that help people in this world, because Tiffany was so down. I mean, were you ever, did you ever think of taking your life through all this process?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. First of all, the guilt, and I'm not going to go into all the details of what went on, but the guilt of what happened was very difficult for me to have self-forgiveness for, because even though everyone's like, "Oh, it wasn't your fault," it wasn't my fault, but the fact that I couldn't prevent it. I've always been somebody who's fought for women, for people without a voice, for children who's been abused. I really can't stand that. I have and I can pick up on when things are happening. You know, I have a lot
Mhm.
of, you know, like Queen did our human design, and the first thing she said is
Oh,
how divinely connected it is. My crown is
oh,
open. I
yeah.
can see things. So the problem was, how could I not see some of this? Well, I told you, like several people, my lash lady, my facialist, they were like, "You did know." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, October,
Mm.
you said this. You said, I think he slept with this girl at this thing." And I was like,
And that's
"Oh,
when you're still married, not when you're separated.
yeah, that's when we were still married." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then I was talking to the lash lady. She's like, "No, you flat out said to me, da 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 da." Da." And I was like basically, I think he's up to something. Something's going on. I don't know what he's doing. So when all that was happening, I was like, okay. I wasn't as in the dark as I thought. It's just that when it's hitting you, and look, it all happened March 18th. We found out. I kicked
Of
him out April 7th
22?
of 2022. I kicked him out April 7th. I had to graduate with my master's degree May 7th, and then the 8th was Mother's Day. This is in Pensacola in the Panhandle. People from Florida don't go to the Panhandle unless we have a really good reason. And so the reality is, I'm just saying, it's a well-known fact. We don't go to the Panhandle. So the reality is, I had to drive up there for that. I had to finish my degree. I did. But I had to call my teacher and say, okay, there's really no way around this. I need an extension. I am not able to finish this work this week or last week's work. And here's why. Now, she had me in other classes, thank God, because then she knew who I was, what I was capable of, you know what I'm saying? It gave me some
Mhm.
reparability. No, that's not the right
Right.
word. Like credibility on my work.
Credibility,
Like
right,
she knew
right.
my credibility. She knew my reputation. We'll just say reputability is a new word now. It's our thing. I'm going to make a shirt. Okay. So the reality is, I'm talking to her, and I knew her, and she was an attorney. And actually, the class we were taking was autism in the law. So I tell her what's going on, and I'm having to tell her. And she said, okay, so I have news for you. This is going to get so much worse before it gets better. As a matter of fact, not only is it going to get worse before it's getting better, this is going to be a really long road for you. It's going to be really hard. You're going to have some really trying and difficult times, and you're going to cry a lot. I
Mhm.
was like, thanks. And she goes, no, I need you to know, if you need
Right.
more time, I'm not worried about you finish this class by May 7th. I'm not. She goes, we graduate on the 7th. Everything's due on the 7th. Obviously, we're not getting it all in. She goes, so if you have to take another week or two, do it. I don't care. Well, it took me about 3 weeks. And then I don't know what happened. I sat down and boom, I did all the work for 3 weeks. Of course, it was one class. I want to point out it was one class, but I did all the work for 3 weeks and 4 days. But I just what I did was my brain was working. So I didn't stop. I just continued to barrel away as much work as I could do because my brain was working. I could read, I could sit, I could, and I haven't been able to since I graduated to get back and study for my state test at all because I can't until what did I tell you about a few weeks ago? I was able to sit and start reading again.
Right. Yeah, you were so yeah. I mean, and that's the thing that we need people to understand is that this the unpeeling of the years of abuse and mental torment and gaslighting and doubting that who she is and who she knows she is and always being suppressed that
Yeah.
her ex would do to her, and that's just me telling your words,
Yeah.
that through this process now we're closing in on, I mean, we're 2.5 years from when all this originally went down.
Well, it's coming up on 2 years. So we're just shy of 2 years.
Just shy
So
of 2
yeah,
years.
yeah,
Okay.
we're
But
coming
either
up
way,
on it.
it's
We're
taking
rounding
you this long,
18
and you've
months
done
to
a
2 years.
lot of stuff to heal yourself. A lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Not only
it's
physically, but mentally, subconsciously. That's
I had
stuff that has reached
I
back
had all the
before your
physical
marriage.
problems that
Right.
were dealing with my lungs, which we know I was dealing with lung issues for so long. But when you look back at Hashimoto's and different issues that I have, that's all connected to really, really, and Queen would substantiate what I'm
Mhm.
saying.
Right.
There's a lot of psychological connections to those autoimmune disorders. Now, my symptoms have gotten way better. Like I can do all sorts of stuff that I couldn't do before, right? And
Right.
I've been physically working at it. I went to
Right.
extremely expensive specialists. I did some surgeries like the sinus ones. that caused me to be able to breathe better, not get as many sinus infections. Because remember, I was getting like sinus infections 3 to 4 times a year. That's not happening anymore. So I was in the hospital with hyperinflated lungs. Remember that all the time. That's not happening. I mean, I just had COVID, and Kyle I wasn't fine, but I was here at the house. I didn't have to go to the
last time
hospital.
you had COVID, you were in the hospital.
I was in the hospital, then I was on oxygen for 3 months. And they were putting me on steroids then for like, what was it, 7 months?
Yeah.
I mean, I swelled up. The swelling alone from the steroids was like I was a stuffed pig. And I remember when the swelling started coming down from that, people thought I lost like a ton of weight, and it was just the swelling, you know. And even now, well, because I've been on steroids for the since I got back, because I was sick. So since I've been on steroids since the 11th. So basically, or 12th. So basically, I'm having a little swelling, but it'll go down pretty fast. I'm not worried. Plus, with the lymphatic massages and stuff that I have to do, I'm not worried about it. But the reality is, that stuff isn't as worrying to me. Like, I remember when Tiona said to me immediately afterwards, she's like, you're going to continue to attract the same type of people until you fix it. And I said, I do know. And that's why.
What kind of people? You kind of mumbled
the same type of people. Like, basically all people end up attracting the same type of people until you change you. Basically, you can't change your life until you change you. Taylor Swift is right. You're the problem. So if you are you are, and you have,
really
and
good,
I know
really good concert, by the way.
Really good concert.
Friday night. It was awesome.
And, and I literally can tell you, I knew she was right. My undergrad's in psychology and organizational business management. And I also have, which is a full psychology degree plus extra classes in business management and business analysis. So it's not like,
but no, but didn't he tell you that you would never be successful in that? You would never.
Oh yeah.
Why would you want to go back to school?
Oh, no, he actually said to me, it's kind of a waste of money for us to send you back to school instead of me. Because he was intelligent and I was not. Yes, he was an actual certified genius, and I'm just whatever.
I would like to point out the narcissistic way.
Well, I would like to point out I graduated from Rollins College, one of the top #1 colleges in the South for liberal arts, and I graduated magna cum laude. And I had 5 awards, including a Dean Award and a Public Service Award. I got a ton of awards.
You FaceTiming me with your gown on.
Yeah.
At graduation.
And you watched me graduate on the video. So did Angela Ryder, a bunch of other people with my master's. It was.
Yeah, we tuned in. And that was right after the ball dropped. That was right.
Well, it was, and you had just left because you guys left. I think, the 3rd, and then I went to Pensacola.
We were down there for cheerleading. Yeah.
Yep. So we had a whole line of things, and I was always getting nails in my tire. But you know what? He would put nails in my tire when we were married. So anyway, I'm talking to Tiona about it, and she's saying, "Oh yeah,
cars? He would sabotage his own. He
would sabotage them because he wanted to prove that, So I went out on a girls' thing in Tampa with one of my best friends that I've known since I was 8 years old, and her, the 3 of us girls got together, and we were eating at someplace there, and he goes to show up, and I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh God, I was so confused." He goes, I couldn't remember if you said it was a girls' thing or I was supposed to come." He drove from Orlando. He knew. We had talked that morning. He absolutely knew. There was no confusion.
He was checking up on you.
He wasn't checking up. He can't handle. He hated being left out. He took it so personally offended. He knew I was with her, but he just couldn't believe he couldn't be involved. And he's like, I was always hanging out with the girls before we were married. I don't understand why I can't go. I'm like, because it's a girls thing. I don't go to your guy stuff. Because I don't want to be there. I actually didn't like the people he hang around with. I always complained. He hung around with people who had a very low vibrational level. They were very low vibrational. And I always tell people this, and I say this with my affirmations and manifestation stuff. If you want to continue to move forward in your life, don't hang around low vibrational people. If they are not a value add, don't hang around with them. If they're value takeaway, why are you what are they doing to be productive in their life? How are they moving forward? Are they benefiting people? Because if you're on this planet,
all about that. It all flashed back to you're as successful as the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
If you surround yourself with like-minded people, you're going to be successful because there's nobody squashing your dreams.
I think he didn't like to. He always felt comfortable around low level people. I think it's because he felt better than them.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think he
once
always
again, that's a
knew,
narcissistic way.
yeah, and I think he
I
always knew
learned a
he was,
lot last week when we did Tiona's show. I
yeah,
learned a lot about narcissism because even if you go back and listen to that show, there was discussion about people being confident. Is that narcissism? And it's not.
yeah.
And
It's
that's
not.
the thing. It's not that. It just asking the fact that, hey, listen, because someone is so confident, does that mean that they have these tendencies? And just
Well,
someone
it's
asking
your
that means no.
insecurity that really pushes it off.
Right.
And Tuna didn't have a chance to get into that, but we're going to on
Yeah,
her
we're
next
going to,
show.
right.
Yeah. And we
Yeah,
have
we're gonna
somebody
have a lot
on
more
talking
shows. I
about
mean,
deviant behavior.
yeah.
And we have a specialist who's been working in deviant behavior for years, and she
Mhm.
manages some clinics, and she's got a mental health degree and specializes in deviant behavior,
Right.
and she does an amazing job.
Yeah,
She's going to
you
be
gotta
on here.
remember, people, the people we're bringing on, we're not bringing on just people that have an opinion. We're bringing on
That's
people
right.
that have studied it and have
That's right.
that have dedicated their life to the things that they're
Yeah.
talking about. So
And
of course,
I verified them. I either
right.
personally know them and know
Oh
their
yeah,
track history,
right.
or
Or
I
we vet
know
them.
that somebody
We vet
else
them.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. No one
But
ever comes on our show and has just the first time we've met them and they come on. We've vetted them. We've talked about it. We want to see what they can bring to our show and bring to the viewers of the show and benefit and everything. So, real quick, what else do you want to talk? What are you able to tell more about your past 2 years with your
um,
ex-husband, or are
I
we
mean,
still in that realm of needing to wait another 30 days, or the legality stuff? Like, what are
I
you
don't
allowed
really
to
know
say?
when I don't know when we'll get into that actually,
Okay.
but I do know that the reality was I couldn't do a lot. My son wasn't aware of what was happening in our home, and
Right,
the
because you're
reality
protecting
was
him.
I,
And
w- I
and
was.
wasn't it when you came back after the first separation, wasn't it because you had an eerie feeling about protecting your son?
There were
And
some stance.
that
There
may not
were
be something you want
some.
to talk about, but
Well, I'm not going to get into some of that. It was bigger than that, and I had
okay.
some confirmations on it, and there were just some stuff, and also he was in college and he didn't know any of the things, so there's
Your
a
son
lot
was in
to that.
college, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and I didn't want to. There was so much
Right.
to that. It's so much deeper, but the reality was, um, yeah, I mean, it has made it hard for me to consider. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that's a lot. There a lot went on there. We'll get in. I'm sure
Okay.
there'll be a
All right.
time.
Like I said, I'm not trying to pull stuff out of you you're not allowed to say yet, or things that you're because there is some, you are, I mean, what we call it your legal team, right? I mean, you've got the divorce legal stuff, you've got the the
I should sue
you've got
him just for, yeah.
you've got multiple people, pressing charges against him, so and
It's so fun. It's a lot.
And I mean, there is some stuff that is public knowledge, that already are public knowledge.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's
So
stuff people can look up if they
they can
wanted
look it
to.
up. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think any woman who just believes some guy's story, and I always say this to people, they tell me, or I'm talking to them somewhere, like I'm not dating, or I don't go out on dates, but when you're out, you talk to people, right?
Right.
And they're like, oh, so my question's always, oh, what did you get a divorce for? And then they'll tell you. And I
Yeah, we're
always
like,
say, what would your wife say the reason is? What would your ex-wife say?
right.
And they're like, what? Now, here's the deal. When you ask that question, I have a series of questions I ask. I will put them up when I do my thing. We'll put them up on a page. People can ask them themselves. They're a great series of questions. It's not so much that they're answering it truthfully. It's how they answer that lets you know who they really are. So, for example, I asked somebody that once, what would your ex say is the reason that you broke up? What is that? And then they would tell me an answer. This one person said, well, they would tell you this. I was detached. I wasn't present. I was blah, blah. They gave me a whole list of things. So I thought that was very honest. And I said, what could you have done differently? right now looking back to change that situation. When a man answers those questions, be careful how they answer it. Because if they're too quick and it rolls off their tongue, this isn't their first day. If it's too polished and too pretty, there's a problem. But also try to see where it's real. Well, I know what could have went wrong. I mean, I do believe it was ridiculous that she did this or that, but I'm guilty too for these things, like, and the reality is you don't know inside of a situation how bad it's going to unfold. I actually had no clue how deep this rabbit hole went. And so when this whole process, let's say, look how much I found out in the last 3 months.
Right.
And some of the crazy stuff we can't talk about right now. But I'm like, oh my word. And how God, like to the point that, and I can't tell you how many women, like it's not one, it's like all of them, all the women have asked me immediately, how did you not kill him? I left. I went to Ohio, remember?
Yeah.
I left. I left immediately because if I had stayed, I knew it wasn't going to be a good situation. And I really had to really use a lot of emotional intelligence on this one. It was intense. The reality is, it's been a lot. It's been a long year. It's been a long two years. I will tell you that I'm shocked at some of the things I found out. Found out some things recently that I was like, knew it, I guess. And I did know it, but I just didn't want to admit it. The reality is when I found a lot of this shit out recently, the first thing I said was, and I even told you, I can't even be mad anymore.
Right. It's because I think because you've come so far and you have closed some doors, even though the reason why we want to start this podcast is so you can get it off your chest. And knowing that we couldn't start this podcast to tell the tunnel of lies, if you've looked at the title of this episode, the tunnel of lies is what we're going to be calling it, because that's exactly what this marriage was, right? That's what you and I settled on when we came up with that concept, is that it was a complete tunnel, and tunnels are long, right? Marriages are long, and it was a complete tunnel of lies that were just over and over and over again. And through the healing that you've done for yourself and what you knew you had to do to find who you really are, so that, we all know who you are. The people that know you know who you are. But there was so much of a mental beatdown of yourself from him.
By November, if I had thought Javen could live on his own, I probably would have done something.
This was
horrible.
November of last year, right?
Yeah. But that was gone by December. I mean, that, Javen's friend the week came to stay with me, and I had to be a mom again, and I had to jump back into it like that. And his family ended up coming to stay too. And that was a really good turning point. I think it was Christmas. We had to go through all the Christmas stuff. And the weekend I got along really well. It was like having a new kid in the house. It was like I did all of it, set him up with the stuff with college, took him there, did all of those things. And it kind of just pumped some life back into me, right? And I had to do things like be present at the house, make dinner, supply things for him, because like you can't just live in separate rooms, right? Like I made it a home, and so he was here, and he got here, and I can't remember when his family came, but and his mom and I are friends.
This is your son's friend.
Yeah, his friend. So they came, and her and I are friends. She called and said, can you come stay? Of course he can, obviously, don't worry about it, I got this. And it was actually probably like the best thing. And she told me later she had prayed about it because she had a couple options on where to put him, and God said, no, he needs to go to Tiffany's. And I said, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I was going through some stuff.
not knowing what you needed at that time, you needed to keep your mind on some other project person. Not saying that he was a project, I'm not saying that, but some other thing that kept you away from just the spiral that you could have gone down, and the spiral of negativity.
Yeah. And it gave me an extra person to buy for Christmas, which, actually does help me. And so, it just actually like generated all of that stuff. So by January, I don't know, there was just a day where I woke up and I realized no one's going to pull me up. I got to do this myself. I need to
Yep.
stand up.
Hence,
And
hence the
I
name of
kept
this
waiting.
episode is Phoenix Rising. You know,
And
and boy, have you risen.
I went through quite a bit through that, and it was a lot. That January was a huge change. We made a lot of series of steps. I started healing in like great ways. I went to this lady who does like cranial. Oh, I looked it up earlier, so I know the name. It's cranial something healing, and you and I talked about having her on the show. My friend Leslie was working there, and she had done something on her page about these healing things, which I actually use these little sticky things after my surgeries, and they help you heal faster. And I do heal very fast. They really work great. I love them because I don't heal well with my autoimmune issues, but because I do this series of things. I do the IVs, I do certain injections, I do the protein. And I do lymphatic massages. I do those little tabby things. I do all of it. So because of it, and one of the other things is different kinds of cryotherapy with cold stuff.
For sure.
It moves the blood, like so it moves the blood.
There's so many benefits. We can't wait to have somebody who
can do it.
Everything there is about cryotherapy. There's so many benefits to cryotherapy.
I'm gonna have Kelly on talking about it. We were just talking about it yesterday. I had to go in for some we did like a whole thing of injections like NAD and glutathione and was it vitamin C, vitamin B, something. And those even though I got an IV the other day, because I was sick, I needed some injections to get through whatever. I was not that I was worn down, but I didn't want to get worn down, right? We have a lot going on. This is a huge week. I'm rebuilding a couple of things. I have some other stuff coming up. I am downing like the information I need on this. I've been talking to people left and right about promoting stuff. It's like crazy. And I'm still worn out. Like I'm kind of like, I woke up, okay, I'm not sick today. And then I just hit the ground running and I booked all my appointments in a day. And I was just like, oh my God. So the next day I woke up like a train hit me. But I feel like last year I did all those different therapies. They not only helped me heal faster, but I started coaching too. I've had 5, I think I've had 7 coaches. If you count my hypnotherapist as a coach, then I've had 7. Yeah. I actually think he does count, quite frankly, because we don't just do the hypnotherapy. We go in and we talk. I mean, the one day I think we talked for like an hour before we started, but we're on the same page with a lot of stuff. And he's very, spiritually in tune too. And he's Christian.
Well, I know that you've called me a couple times after sessions and you're just like, oh my gosh, there a huge discovery today. And you know, stuff that you had either pushed down or subconsciously didn't recognize during this process that helped you understand why you were the way you were the last year or so. Negative thoughts, other things like that, that they opened up through that. And we're going to have hypnotherapists on and people that do this. And, and actually Queen is also not just
Queen talked about it too, but we are going to have
one episode on with Queen already. You can go back and look at hers. It's Human Design, but she also does hypnotherapy, which we've got another show coming up with her on it. So we've got some amazing guests.
Well, I think we did the hypnotherapy one already, and her human design one hasn't shown up yet. I think that's what it is, right? We did hypnotherapy.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Human design hasn't showed up. You're right.
Yeah. But she she was awesome. And Queen and I hit it off right away too. And I really liked her. And we have a feng shui lady coming on that I really love because she's
I don't want her to see my office.
When
my
you do,
office looks
it's
nice
so
and neat
crazy.
because I've got a green screen.
Well, here's the thing. What was ironic to me is she's like, first of all, this isn't a book that you can just read and go, here's how I feng shui my house. She goes, no. It's individual to the person, how they decorate, how they are. It's not like put a bamboo plant in your house. That doesn't, she goes, that's not how it, and she was so smart about it. And so she was saying, so she looked at some pictures of me. I took some pictures and she was telling me some stuff. She goes, you don't like tradition. She goes, you like to stay on the edge. You're very bold. You're confident. You're creative. She goes, you are definitely independent. You like to stay in charge. She goes, but you are really not afraid of humbling yourself to be a team player. She this is from looking at my room.
Right.
And I was like, that's scary. She goes, but you're unstable. I said, what? She goes, emotionally right now, I feel like
Yeah.
maybe you're not letting people in. I
And she
said, oh,
and oh, really? You think so?
huh, that's so
And she didn't
weird.
know any of this other stuff.
I don't know.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're getting
Yeah.
better. I know you're getting better. I can see it in your face. I can see
I
it in
think
your
you and I talked about that. I'm not I'm not very approachable for letting people in. If somebody was going to get under the wire, well, first of all, if I spend any 5 minutes with someone, they have an energy level that I accept. I mean,
right.
if I spend 5 minutes with you at all, you have an energy level I can set. If I continue to speak with you and we have continued to talk about anything, it's because your energy level and your potential and what you are capable of is up here. Because if it's not, I'm not doing that. And that's like, I'm not going to continue to hang out with you, talk to you, go to a movie with you. I mean, this accounts with girlfriends too. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Anybody, right?
Oh,
And the people I keep in my life.
Yeah, I call them energy
So
suckers. You don't want them around you.
it's not even not an energy sucker. It's just you have to be a high vibrational person, even if you don't know you are. I know you are, or I wouldn't be talking to you. But no, I'm not approaching. If I was to be, if something was going to happen and somebody would fall under that wire, it would be because my guard was down for some reason. But my guard's pretty high up, so that's not actually happening. My guard's pretty high. But if that guard is down, and that happened, it doesn't negate the energy level rule. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like I wouldn't have continued to talk to somebody that didn't have that high vibrational level, that potential. I didn't see, if I can't see that you matter in some way and that you're going to produce something, I'm not going to do. I don't break that rule anymore.
I was going to say, how often did you break it when you were with your ex? Every day?
All the time. No, back then I broke it. First of all, back then I was empathetic.
That man is not a high energy person or high vibrational person.
Here's what's interesting. And you and I just talked about this before the show earlier tonight. And I said I wanted to bring this up. So this is perfect. Empathy is not, people are like, oh, you got to be compassionate because what people go through in their child. No. Being compassionate about what people go through as a child means you care about them and you help them heal. That's what that means. It doesn't mean you allow yourself and your child to be abused. And if that's what you're doing, you now suck. And you're repeating the cycle and you're causing it to continue and you're actually endangering your kid mentally and psychologically. So I think I'm extremely what do you call that? Unforgiving for people who hurt kids. And if you are someone in a relationship, and I'm going to say this publicly because we're live and this will be on our YouTube channel forever. If you know your kid is being abused by a family member, whether it's your father or an uncle or your husband or the stepfather of the kids, and you aren't doing anything, God help you, because I hope everything in the universe comes after you and destroys you. Because number one, you are literally ruining that child, because I don't know what you're getting out of it. A relationship, you piece of crap. I did guardian ad litem work for 3 years, and the amount of people that would stay in relationships with men who sexually abuse their kids was unacceptable. And I don't care, by the way, Kyle, that they went through it as, oh, these women went through. I don't care. Once you're an adult, you don't get to use that excuse. Once you're an adult, especially when you're 30, 29, 30, you now lose the right to go, well, here's what happened. No, I'm sorry. I was abused as a kid. Did I abuse my kid? No, I didn't. That's right. Because I'm a damn adult. I mean, the fact is, you and I both know people that went through stuff as kids and they didn't choose to abuse their kids.
Right.
Because it's a freaking choice. And guess what? If you can't make it a choice, guess what you do, Kyle? You get freaking help, or you tell a family member, I'm not actually good enough to take care of this child because I actually care about them more and I want to help them. So can you help them until I can get help? Right. And you get help. There's AA, there's whatever your problem is. But I'm such a believer in you fix your shit, fix your stuff. What is wrong with you? Let's fix it. Fix it. Right. Let's fix it. And I am a believer in it because I am not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes. I am completely, I went through 18 months of a complete mess. I was a complete mess, but I pulled myself up because I had to, and I refused to lay down and die. But
Right.
I don't tolerate that. I don't tolerate that at all. And I don't like the fact that women stay in relationships, and they say it all the time. And I did that when I dated back then in the 80s and 90s. Here's what I think though, too. We didn't know about the stuff we know about today.
Yeah.
We didn't
There's
know
a
about
lot more we know
narcissism.
about.
Right. But
Right.
what we would do is we'd make excuses for them. Well, they're acting like this because of this. They're acting like this. He has so much potential because he was really smart and intelligent and he worked hard. So I knew all I had to do was put him on a path and he could make something of himself. Except for one thing. It was like pushing a boulder uphill for 28 years. He didn't believe in anything. He's empty completely to the core. He wants and desires nothing. And I'd always ask him, what do you want? Let's make a path for you. I do this in my own life. Kyle, you've watched me do it over the last year. What do I want? I couldn't answer the question, but I was doing it for myself, right? So the stuff I say to people isn't just blank. Wouldn't you agree? Like I apply it to my life.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I'm just as critical of myself, if not more, than I am of other people. But I don't tolerate abuse of kids and allowing it to happen.
Right. Right. And that's one thing I think that one reason why you stayed in the marriage as long as, I remember a long time ago, we were walking through Disney Springs and it was just you and me talking.
Yeah.
And there was something wrong and I knew it. And I'm like, what's going on, Tiff? And you're like, I can't talk about it. And I'm like, are you getting a divorce? And because that's the one thing you go to right away.
Right.
When you have that feeling.
Then the kids were little back then. This was a long time ago.
This was a long time ago. They were little.
Carter, Camden were little. Javen was little.
I was going through my own process of problems, and we worked things through. And I'm like, well, are you going to be able to work through this? And you said, I'm working through this for Javen. I'm working through this for my son.
I had to because he didn't know there was anything else going on. Plus, remember, if I left, he would have him 50% of the time and unchecked. One thing I could do is he would listen to reason when I was like, you can't treat him like that. You can't speak to him like that. You can't do like he would listen to those things because he knew he needed to be a good dad.
Would there be times that he would do his narcissistic and abusive mental stuff on him, but you caught him? And got him straightened around.
There was lots of times I didn't catch him. I mean, he did it a lot, but his thing is being his MO, his major MO is feeling sorry for himself. Like I want everyone to feel sorry for me. I want everyone to feel sorry for me, right? So when we went through this whole thing, and I had to talk to him about Javen one day and how he's a different age. He was in, God, what is it? Kyle, you remember when they go from junior high, from what is it, 5th grade to 6th grade or 6th grade to 7th grade at that age?
Depending on what their school district does, right?
You have elementary, but I mean mentally, psychologically, they're completely different person from the end of that year to the beginning of that next year.
Yeah.
And you have to approach them differently. You cannot treat them like an elementary kid. You can't do this. They expect more respect. And if you don't give it to them, they're not going to listen to you. So I had to explain this to him in great detail. He listened and he changed the way he was approaching him. It took like a week of talking, but I'm not subtle.
Really?
And I'm not quiet. Back then I had less ability to go, okay, here's what I want to see accomplished. Now I can do it very well. I couldn't do it back then. And so he did listen and he changed his tactics. So the reality was I was right. Like I knew being there allowed this. And if I was there, he wasn't doing all these horrible bad habits. And at least if he was keeping them secret.
Or was he doing them with you only?
Well, I didn't do drugs. What?
No, not drugs. No, not drugs, but like the bad habits of the way he would treat you.
Treating me, talking to me abusively, saying things, being abusive, all of those things, right? Oh, doing that with me only, right? But I mean, he was. I could keep at bay all his other problems. He didn't bring them to the house, and if he did, it wasn't anything, So I think that was probably the biggest thing, really. I think that was like the biggest one.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
but yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think she was right on that thing. I am kind of closed off. I'm careful about.
mm,
I don't. I don't want to say I'm careful because I'm not actually doing anything. But the reality
not doing
is,
anything wrong. Yeah, yeah.
no, I'm not doing
No,
anything.
I think, you know, I think
But I make my choices. If I'm going to make my choices in
right.
a hypothetical situation, if I was going to make my choice and these things were going to happen, it would be because I could see something, and the things I can see are something good. And I'm very particular about that. I don't,
Mhm.
and I know Tiona and I had talked about this. I don't play around with that stuff. And if I don't have like these series of signs that happen and pop up, I'm not going to do that. And
Right.
I will say this, I do know I am more compassionate towards things that I know, like, okay, I see this thing, I see all this good stuff, right? But you know, I can see people's past traumas too. So when I see it, I'm a little more compassionate to a behavior trait. So if I'm having a conversation or I'm hanging out with somebody, I'm going to be more compassionate now, knowing because of my education, my history, dealing with people in therapy situations, dealing with rehabilitation stuff. I'm a little bit more compassionate to go, okay, hold on. This person's reacting because of this. I'm going to not let it ruffle my feathers, but I'm going to continue to talk with them and do whatever. And that matters with anything. Like I have friends in their 60s that I'm talking to right now that are going through their own trauma, and I have to
Right.
apply those same principles. And I will say, so being compassionate, I just want to point out, I said that earlier. Being compassionate isn't a bad thing. You just got to make sure it doesn't affect you. The damage
Mhm.
isn't getting done to you. You have some boundaries. I don't think I
Right.
would ever allow abuse again. I'll be honest with you.
Right. Well, of course not. You've come so far and you've learned so much, and you would see it coming from a mile away, and
I
you
would
would
hope
squash
so.
anything. Yeah, you would squash anything. I mean, even
I could
times when
walk
you and
into
I
a
have
wall. I
even
have
there's
certain
times
I
when
have
you and I have
certain
argued.
toxic things that I do enjoy, I'm sure, that I
Well,
would just let go.
but
But
I mean, the thing is even you and I and some of the differences we have as essentially brothers and sisters,
yeah.
if if I say something, which I'm not perfect, just like Tiffany said,
Mm.
we're not perfect people. There's times I say stuff that's just darn right mean to you, right? And you
Yeah,
go,
but
wait,
you
whoa.
admit it.
Well, I don't just admit it, I back up really, but
Hmm.
more so than that, you you go, hey, not right, Kyle,
And I
check
wasn't able
yourself.
to do that. I wasn't
And
even
you
able
weren't
to
able
do
to
that
do
a
that
year
before.
ago.
And I'm not, see,
No.
it was just a test. I'm just testing to make sure that you've got your shit together, right? No.
But I like that you said that because it is a new boundary line I wasn't able to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And I know that
literally
I'm one of your best
before
friends.
before the
Yeah.
coaching and the
That it,
hypnotherapy, I couldn't do that.
yeah.
I couldn't say, "Hey, I'm not allowing this trait in my life." Now,
Yeah.
I feel that I did talk to my hypnotherapist recently. I said, "I feel like maybe I'm too direct." And he goes, "Yeah, I don't want to fix that." He goes, "I don't think you
Yeah.
are." He goes, "I think you've always been a direct person. It's just now you know what you're saying and you're not backing
Right.
down." Which
Yeah. I would agree with that. Right.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Tiona heard me on the phone with the Lexus people when they messed up something with my car. And she
Oh
was
my
like, wow.
gosh.
And I was like, was it bad? Was it bad? She goes, no, no,
Yeah.
you said exactly what it was, but you didn't back down. And I'm like,
Mhm. Right.
wow, that's really
Well, and
dangerous.
so many people, a woman in that world, they don't know what they're talking about, just like we talked about on that one show we had earlier with one of our guests. It was the medical one, and the husband could come in and say something, and they're like, "Oh," and they
Yep.
listen to him, and the woman, and that's
Yep.
bullshit. That's like these women these days, and we've talked about this on our show, and this isn't a man hating show. That's one reason
No,
why
I love men.
it's not a
We've
man
all
hating
sorts of
show,
things about a
but on the
man.
other hand, it's also a woman liberating show. It's both. It's
Hmm.
a woman liberating show, and it's not a man hating show.
No.
It's about women and men both being, because there's men out there that are being abused too, and
Yeah.
there's it's
No, there
about
are. Yeah.
both of us who are willing to be who we are and be okay with it and say what we need to say, and as long as we're not
Men
being
are
rude to
less
people.
likely to want to get help.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The thing
And
is, I do know the steps to do for lots of stuff. If I had known 2 years ago to do this, my life would be so
oh yeah,
different right now. I
but that
mean,
was, you're
my
being
word.
squashed so often. I mean,
Oh, when I even did the
the
craniotherapy,
toxic environment.
immediately it
Yeah.
pulls out this trauma that was like physically painful when I did the one therapy, like emotionally
Mhm.
inside painful.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was like, what is that? And she goes, that's whatever childhood trauma. And so I went into hypnotherapy. He goes, which area was that? I said, it was liver. He goes, that's childhood trauma. That's what my
Mm,
hypnotherapist said. He goes, she was pulling out trauma. I was like, and it was
mm,
deep rooted to the point where I remember she's like, you need to let go. And I was like, oh, like I was the one holding on. Does that make sense?
yeah.
During
Yeah.
that therapy
Oh
session.
yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah.
have her on the show too, but she that was crazy. I I do think there is a problem with women. For some reason, which I think you will think is funny, people can seem to be intimidated by me. And I find that funny since I am probably the most empathetic, sweet person, and I give up and I give in too easy. And I'm just like, okay, let me just make everything better. I'm just gonna fix whatever your hurts are.
Right.
But there's something about me that seems a little bit, I don't know, but I've heard it a lot.
Well, and that's okay, because that can be construed as someone who is, you're a confident person in yourself and you're a confident woman, and that could be their insecurities about being around confident women, and
That's
that's
true.
that's
Yeah.
on them. That's not your fault, right? So, well, real quick,
Yeah.
we're right here. We're real close to, we're at an hour right now. I know we want to
Yeah.
make sure that this
We
is
want
a
not too
digestible
long. Yeah.
episode. What do you want to do to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes? How
Um,
do you want to wrap this up?
I don't
Because of
know.
course this was that. I hope you feel that you've got some stuff out that you wanted to get out.
I think we
Um,
covered a lot of stuff, and I think, don't you?
yeah, I think
Here's what
so.
I think. I think I do know that like one of the things Tiana and I had just talked about, and I think I brought this up earlier. Uh, a lot of times people tend to think that when you are a woman who's successful and you're an adult and you have your own independence, that there's not anything you need. And I think that's funny. Her and I were both laughing about that, because you don't think that Jen doesn't need something. You're married to her. You're not like, oh God, there's nothing I have to offer my wife. I mean, you don't think that because you've been with her from the beginning. But my point is, like, any kind of situation should be more, it shouldn't be about the things. And I think that's the point too. Most of the women I know at my age that are independent and successful and have come through so much trauma, difficulty in areas, and have stayed independent, and they're choosy for a reason. It doesn't mean that you can't have something to offer. It just means it has to be more than somebody saying, hey, I'm going to get you a nice dinner, a bag, and some roses. Well, I can buy my own roses. I have my own bags you probably can't afford. And I take myself to dinner all the time to nice places. So those things are fake. Those things are like, just, that's not a real thing. I don't know. I mean, does that make sense? Like, what do you think? It's more than that. It's not even just the talking or the love or the relationship, because that's not always the case either. I think sometimes it's more like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Tiona and I were talking about it the other day, because it's a big thing. And I don't know. What's your thought? What's your take, man? You're the man. You have a manness.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I ultimately feel that. Yeah, I mean, I bring what I want to bring to my relationship, whether it's friends or whether it's my marriage, and and I have to make sure that I'm genuine, because if I'm not genuine, people will see right through it. And it's just one of those things where I don't feel I need to do the things to show my love. It's all
Yeah.
goes back to that 5 love languages.
Yeah.
The most time that I feel connected to my wife feels connected to me is when I'm done cleaning the freaking house, right? Like
I was just gonna say, if someone came over and changed my light bulbs, I'd
Right.
be in love with them. You did change
Right.
light bulbs. I do
Well,
love you.
but yeah, you do
Yeah.
love me, but you're not in love
I
with
do
me.
love you.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'm serious. If I was gonna
Yeah.
see a guy and he came over and he said, I'm gonna change your air vent because you said it needs change, and I'm fixing these light bulbs that are out. Well, how long have they been out? Where's the ladder? And he did that, I'd be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm going to do these certain
Yeah.
sexual things to you right now. Like, I would be done. I would be like, what can I?
Not me,
do?
not me, not me.
No, not Kyle. No, Jen actually knew I had a list when he got here.
Yeah,
I'm like, I got a
yeah,
list, Jen.
And she was like, "Hey, get your list. He's coming down."
Yeah, well, because when you got batteries, when you get
Right.
a man here, you need him to do the stuff you can't do the batteries for.
Right.
So you got the things. I mean, the reality
All right.
is,
Well, everybody, on that note, we're going to wrap this show up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. This is the beginning of the Phoenix
My-
Rising series and the
I'm
the
still
series
suffering from
of
COVID.
Tunnel of Lies that we can get more into later on once the legality parts are done. But we wanted to at least come on. It's our first live show. As you can see, that won't be cut out. Because it's a live show.
I can't cut it out, but I can't help it. I just got COVID. What do you want?
I know. And you're doing great. You didn't even when we talked
No.
before, you were really struggling with breathing, but so you're doing great. So once
Yeah.
again, Tiffany, go ahead and sign us off. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I know I've already said that a couple of times. Go to our store, go to our website, theelitefew.com. Look at our merch, look at our t-shirts. It's all good stuff. So Tiffany, take us away.
Everybody, my goal is that you can all learn and grow and actually be able to walk away, being able to protect yourself, keep yourself safe, and know something about yourself a little bit. And I hope in every episode you learn that. I know we have so much more to open up about, and we have so much more to talk about. But the reality is, there are so many things you can do to make yourself heal. Stand up, go out there. And I don't just mean go talk to somebody. I mean, when I said I have 7 coaches, do it. Get some coaching, figure out where you want to start, figure out what you want to change about yourself. I am a huge believer in hypnotherapy. It will literally change your algorithm of your brain. It's amazing. And yes, I get it. Would I start that the end of August, Kyle? Was that right? Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
So I started at the end of August. So my point is, before that, I was still confident and mouthy and all that other stuff. But it still changed. And you can say you noticed it immediately. My focus, my ability being on track. So I'm saying, get you guys, like, do this. Okay, ladies, get out there. Men too. I really want you guys to be awesome. I want you guys to get out there and heal yourselves and change your lives. And I want this show to be able to help you. So stay fabulous and continue